Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbaugh.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today who's really going to give us an understanding of something that we can all connect with and how it could help us move onward and upward faster. Jeff Piersall was born in Orlando, Florida, and raised for elementary schooling in Winchester, Kentucky, and graduated from high school in Dade City, Florida at Pasco High School. During his junior year at Pasco High, a special teacher saw something in him, his talent for leadership. Jeff was a 4-sport letterman at the time, but basically the class clown. So running for student government president, the most prestigious honor at the school, was way out of his comfort zone. But this teacher convinced him to run, and he actually won, and went on to have one of the greatest moments in the history of the school, starting activities that still to this day that are traditions at Pasco, which all 4 of his younger brothers enjoyed graduating in the years to come, and still today nieces and nephews experience them nearly 40 years later. Jeff's younger brothers and his mom were all Mensa qualified academic types, and he was the only entrepreneur in the group. Jeff got his entrepreneurial spirit from his grandmother on his dad's side and his coaching skills from his grandfather on his mother's side. The unique combination of both has been the successful edge that Jeff possesses in leading people. When he was 10, he and his buddies would play cops and robbers all over town in Winchester, Kentucky, riding their huffy bicycles all day. One particular road was home to a huge Dalmatian dog that would chase you with the most ferocious bark. The kids all avoided that street. One day, Jeff thought he would teach the barking dog a lesson and took the street on purpose. And when that dog came after him, instead of racing with fixed eyes on the target at the end of the street, he turned and kicked the dog's jaw. And instead of making contact, the dog bit him in the left cheek of his butt. Barking dogs only chase moving objects, and if you pay attention to them, they will bite you, a lesson for all people, but especially entrepreneurs building a business. After graduating from Troy University with a physical education degree in 1981, Jeff followed his grandfather's influence and became an accomplished high school and college basketball coach for the decade of the 80s. He left the basketball ranks in 1990, but never quit coaching. He was an accomplished salesperson and sales manager in the 90s, working both domestically and internationally. He became CEO of a turnaround company that was a spinoff from DuPont and ConAgra in 2000, moving him to Melbourne, Florida, his current resident today, except for the time he stays in Tennessee at his second home. Jeff is the author of Dogs Don't Bark at Parked Cars, where he shares how to build the foundation for leading an ethical, capitalist organization, the only real method to provide prosperity for our communities and country and globe. Unethical is unsustainable. Jeff is most proud of his 35-year marriage to Judy, and their 3 children are their greatest accomplishment. They are now 36, 26, and 24, and they are each successful contributors to society and make a difference with the people they touch every day. Jeff Piersall, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And thank you for being here today. You know, when we talk about ethical capitalism, you know, it really is a void in the marketplace today because between our universities and our media, we continue to get capitalist as really a cuss word. Quite honestly, when you know the true value and what it really stands for, and you blend that with the component of ethical, you now have a power tool. And through the thousands of CEOs we've interviewed over the last 13 years, I got to tell you, over 95% of them all fit the definition of ethical capitalism, but you don't hear about them. The only thing you ever hear about on the media is the ones that have done it wrong.
You know, it's really interesting you just say that. And a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with my next door neighbor who was the dean of business school for like 22, 23 years, which happened to be like the 3rd longest tenure of any dean in any business school in any major university. And we were talking about ethics. And he finally stopped me and he said, you know what? He goes, C-level people don't care about ethics. He goes, because it doesn't affect the bottom line. But you're saying different.
Yes. Very much so. I mean, I tend to like, and we quoted in the book, Harris Rosen of the Rosen Shingle Hospitality Center in Orlando. And he's such a great example because he was asked to give a graduation speech at Cornell. And they said they wanted him to come speak on the topic of ethics. And he turned the speech down. And he said, that's very simple. There's only just one statement. Just do what's right. And if you work for Harris Rosen and you work for him for 5 years, he will pay for your children to go to college. That's ethical capitalism. And that is what Harris Rosen is all about. And we see this all over the place. And I understand what your dean is trying to say, but it's really taking something in a silo and saying, just because I got to make tough decisions as a CEO, that doesn't mean that they're unethical decisions. That just means that sometimes some people aren't going to come out on the best side of that stick, but you've got to make the ethical right decision. And that typically is kind of like Spock would always say, you know, the few do not outweigh the many.
So as you're sitting there talking, I have to go to the book and actually how you've outlined it, because ultimately you're giving the elements or the pillars. I mean, there's many ways you can describe it for an organization to actually build, you know, an ethical operation and therefore receive, you know, the benefits associated with that. I'd like to run through those if that's possible.
Yes, please.
So the first one we have is the foundation of trust, relational priority, diversity of expression, influence, not imposition, the significance of synergy, prevailing vision, process orientation, validating desire, recognizing life as both natural and spiritual, and then building a legacy. Are these also in an order of maturation, meaning that I need to first start with that foundation of trust in order to be able to go to the second, or can these things be worked on at different times or even in parallel?
You know, it's a great question. Honestly, nobody's ever asked me that. However, there is a hierarchical structure in the sense that really the foundation of trust is where it all starts. And if you don't have trust, everything else is going to be substantially more difficult. And obviously, legacy and what you're leaving is obviously the last and the ultimate goal of whatever your passion and desires are. Now, in between there, they can kind of rearrange in any certain fashion, but trust and legacy are definitely the bookends.
So I also like the way that you actually position this, talking about that, you know, a story in your bios. You talk about that these 10 qualities have been part of the attributes that you found in the most effective trailblazers and dog outrunners.
Yes.
So in other words, you're not going to get bit in the butt if you get these 10 things right.
Yeah, I mean, it you know, when you think about it, it really is a constant journey. And inside that journey, there's a lot of little sprints. And, you know, even the story of us being kids when we were running around cops and robbers, if you went down that road where the big Dalmatian was and you stayed focused at the end of the road and all you did was just pedal and went as fast as you could, that dog never bit you. It was just the time that I turned and paid attention to it that it got me. And that is so true. The bigger your purpose, the bigger your why, the more critics you will actually end up having on that journey. And you got to be very careful not to get sidetracked and get your eyes off your goal.
I think that's a great point. I think it's too easy for us to, you know, look backwards when we should be looking forwards.
Yeah, you know, Jim, one of the big pieces, and you really kind of touched on it, we tend to look at barking dogs as external people or external concepts and ideas. And there's a lot of those same barking dogs inside of each of us. And sometimes it's what's inside of us from our past that keeps us from ever achieving our true intention, more so than the people external of us.
I definitely can resonate with that. And I can also resonate the times where I was the barking dog at others.
Yes.
And
we've all been victim. Yeah.
So I know when you start thinking about, you had mentioned something about the longitudinal aspects of you actually doing this research and, and building and understanding these 10 qualities, is that you probably found a lot along the way that maybe possessed one that weren't in the 10, but actually experienced some success. So like, what was the number 11?
Number 11 in our position is really the one virtue that is the sum of all virtues, which is courage. You can have all 10 of these foundational principles, but if you're sitting on the couch and you don't have the courage to get up and to go get in the game, then it really isn't going to matter at the end of the day. And courage is really where all the separation is. And I liken it to for a lot of people. Faith and fear has the exact same definition. It's the things unseen in our future. The difference is which one of those two you choose will have a great difference on the end result. You're not acting with courage because you have great faith. You're acting with courage because you have fear, and the faith gets you to overcome that fear and still act. So it's a very substantial principle, and it is the one that we find in all great entrepreneurs.
So I guess, as you were talking to, and the way that you explained it, I also started thinking, and even, looking at these 10 qualities, I started thinking also about effort. So, I mean, is effort kind of just an implied thing? It's like table stakes. Sorry. I mean, if you don't have any effort, kind of like you talked about getting off the couch. I mean, is it a courage thing, or is it just an overall effort thing? And I think those are two separate things, but maybe that's 12, or maybe that's underlying every single one of these.
It's an interesting concept, because there's the effort. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs in the very beginning will spend an awful lot of time, like myself. You're doing everything and anything in the business. And we sometimes think that effort is outworking others, therefore we'll get where we want to go. When in fact, we need to learn how to work more smart. And that smart working is what's going to get us where we need to go. In fact, today I work on actually taking 150 free days a year. And if you'd have told me that 2 years ago, I would have told you were just crazy. There wasn't even 3 free days. And now, I force myself into those days, and it actually makes me better on the days that I'm actually working. And so there is a tremendous sense of balance that comes out of all of that.
Well, you mentioned something about an entrepreneur, but as you were talking, I also started thinking about somebody who's working within an organization. It's kind of a similar thing, because what I see is that, there's been such a, you want to call it whatever you want, but people are trying to be more agile. They're trying to be more streamlined. They're trying to bootstrap more. They're trying to, really limit the amount of resources. And so what happens as an effect of that is you pile more on people. And right. So, even when you started talking about an effort and focus and all of that, is even when you're inside, it's not just an entrepreneur's problem. It's, you can't do everything.
No. And if you study Coach John Wooden, which was a major influence on me in my lifetime, he has a pyramid of success. And I think this answers the question for you and your listeners. The pyramid has 2 cornerstones. One is joy and one is work. And in the description from Coach Wooden, those 2 cornerstones are there because the pyramid falls apart without them. And your joy must be your work, and your work must be your joy. And out of that, now you can start to build the rest of your life, which leads to competitive greatness. And that is where I like to really refer to it, not necessarily as entrepreneurs, but the entrepreneurial spirit, because it could be a single mom who's raising 3 kids. But that entrepreneurial spirit, that outlook, and the same with my employees. I want employees that have that entrepreneurial spirit to them, because they're going to get more done in less time, and they're going to be much more effective, and they're going to have a positive outlook. They're going to be team players. I mean, everything starts to come together.
Gosh, so when I started thinking about, these 10 elements, the getting chased by the dog, because I've been there too. I mean, as I was reading this and as you were talking about it, I'm like, I wasn't on that road, but I was on another road, and it wasn't a Dalmatian, but it was another dog that was chasing, and this one was nipping at my ankles.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's just so many things I can think about, and that there's a lot of humps that you've had to get over along the way, and a lot of things that have inspired you. And on the show, we look at quotes in order to inspire us. And I know you have several, especially with all the research that you've done in regards to leaders. But is there one or two that kind of stands out that you can share?
Oh, wow. That's really, there's so many of them in my life. I kind of love Zig Ziglar's quote, set yourself on fire and they'll come from miles away to see you burn. And I think it really it says a lot about the whole essence of the book. And it really does say a lot about a person's life. I mean, because you can be the water cooler person who is always down and out, complaining, and find what's wrong. And guess what? You can always get an audience. It's a very interesting thing. But when you get an audience because you're enthusiastic, and I mean balanced enthusiasm, I see a lot of people that take this to the extreme, and they're so enthusiastic, they're so overboard that you got to get away from them because they just don't have a balance to themselves. You present yourself and you communicate with yourself in a very enthusiastic but yet balanced manner. And therefore, people want to listen and they want to hear what you have to say. And I think that's the importance. And Zig always said it, if you're on fire, they're going to come watch. And that really is it. I think there's, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but Teddy Roosevelt's great quote about being on the field of play, and those that are bloodied up at the end of the war are the ones that, really can sit there and say, regardless of the score, I gave it my best. And I think there's a lot to that, because my partners and I and our team, we kind of look at it as in the sports world, you're either a fan or a player. And players are on the field making things happen. Fans are up in the crowd. They've paid to come watch. They're overly enthusiastic. They're all jived up and ready to go. But they ultimately have no outcome on the game. As much as everybody may want it, but ultimately they don't. And it's the players. And I try to challenge everybody, be a player. Get in the game and be a player.
Most definitely. So when you start looking at, this particular, transition and this journey that you've been on, yes, and going through getting over your own hump of, finally running to be that class president and getting it, I know there's a lot of humps that you've had to get over in order to be able to get where you are today. Is there a story that you can share that we can find some inspiration in?
What a great question, because there's been hundreds of them, I think. And I think it's what's uniquely prepared me for what I am today. And I would challenge anybody who's listening today to always know that everybody's journey is extraordinarily unique, and all of them are filled with potholes. There's a lot of times where you get to this point in your life and people will look at you at 58 and they'll go, wow, look at everything that you've accomplished. And, everything is just so neatly put together. And no, it's not. I'm the same guy that, struggled to even believe that he could be the student council president. And then I'm the same person that went through a 14-year history with what I thought was a very good friend who completely, stabbed me in the back and cost me a tremendous journey that I thought was what my destination was. Well, the truth of it was that it wasn't. And then I've even had in this most current business a partner that we had to deal with in the same manners with financial embezzlement and other different types of lies. And, all of us have gone through these battles and these journeys. And the one thing that I learned from my dad from years and years and years ago, and he just always said it to me, he said, just never quit. And, I remember Jim Valvano in his going away speech, and it really, nobody knew it was, but today it's just a landmark. And in the parts of North Carolina where you come out of, you hear it all the time. And it's just never, never, never quit. And that is our journey. And that's really, for anybody on your call, that's got to be your motto. Just never, never quit.
So talking about never quitting, and then talking about taking that extra time and getting more done, talking about, right now over the weekend where you're going to be up in Tennessee and turkey season opens tomorrow, and you're going to have some fun with your brother-in-law. But you have a lot of things going on. Writing a book, they say, is the easy part. Promoting it's a totally different story. That's right. One of the reasons why you're on the show, and we're glad you're here. But you have several things, and by the way, 57, that ain't all. You got a lot of things that you want to accomplish. But if you have one goal, what would it be?
Right now, the one goal that we've got is for the company itself to become a self-managed company. And what I mean by that is that the company itself can run without me being there. And the company has been so reliant upon me. And, yes, I've got a very large, charismatic personality, and therefore it even makes it a little worse. And I am the entrepreneur that's got a new idea every 10 minutes. And that adds a lot of stress to the situation. But about 4 years ago, we started the process to become very process oriented. And as the company becomes more self-managed, then I can go do the things that I'm more uniquely adapt to go do, which is a lot of what we're doing today. But it's even more so back to the teaching roots that I had when I was coaching and teaching these fundamentals and teaching these principles, because I'm really convinced that we're on a move. We've got a huge uprising that's coming. We've got a major trend that a lot of people aren't paying attention to with the baby boomers exiting. You've got a workforce today that's over average age of 50. By 2025, it's going to be average workforce of just over 30. That's a 20-year swing in your workforce in less than 8 to 10 years. And that creates a wisdom gap. And we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of our past if we don't transfer that wisdom. And ultimately, there's one thing I think that all of us are wired for, Jim, and that's freedom. And that freedom comes down into really 4 different pillars. We're either going after time freedom, we're going after money freedom, we're going after, the freedom of relationships, or the freedom of purpose. And if you think of those 4 pillars, those pillars is what makes up ethical capitalism, because that is your pursuit, is after that freedom. And when you think about the guy that's in the inner city streets that's pursuing freedom, but he's doing it through selling drugs, that unethical becomes unsustainable eventually. And you see it across the world in all areas. And I think we've got a huge opportunity to teach ethical capitalism the way it ought to be done. And the millennials are open to it because they're a very balanced generation that will ask questions when given the opportunity.
That's a really good point. And I, unfortunately, with talking about that particular generation and what they get glamorized by, they all think that they can become social media experts or people that get followed by, hey, they've got 1 million followers and are making all this money, or
right.
hey, they can be an athlete, or hey, I think a lot of times the idols, and the people that we have to look up to oftentimes are problematic. And I think it goes back to what, we've been saying a long time ago as far as having the courage and sticking out. I think more of the older generation needs to put themselves in a position to be the ones that we want to emulate instead of, people who are getting that, entertainment
right.
or glamour spotlight.
Well, it's kind of like the last chapter of the book of the 10 principles. Start becoming the person that you want everybody else to be. And, that really kind of says a lot by itself, because we're quick to pass judgment. We're quick to say, oh, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. Well, why don't you start becoming that person, resonate it, and it'll attract and be on its own. So I hear you loud and clear, and I think that there's a huge opportunity in our generational shift to learn courage, to learn persistence. And I think those are some of the things I'm worried about as I'm watching. We've got a brilliant group of kids that are really, really talented, but they can't buy into the lottery mentality because it doesn't work that way. Everything is a long journey.
Yeah, I think there's several things that, we're talking about, being able to create the legacy, and you do it every single day, right? It's what you do day in and day out. We also have a situation where a lot of them don't know how to be resilient. You have to learn resiliency. So there's a lot of these particular factors that I, been talking about for a long time that impact, the effect that our, workforce is going to have on our businesses. Yes. So when we start about, creativity and innovation and all of those things, you have to fail and have to have gone through that failure in order to learn how to overcome.
Yes, you do. Yep.
And so, you also have to be thinking about that legacy that you're going to, be leaving. And it starts with that older generation. I mean, I specifically remember sitting down in a particular meeting where I was on the finance committee for our church, and one of the folks on the finance committee, was talking about his giving and the way that he gives. And he said, well, that's personal. I don't talk about that. And I said, well, how do you expect the younger generation to learn what giving means? And he just kind of looked at me strange. And I'm like, you keep it to yourself, and that's where it dies.
That's exactly where it dies. And, it's you made a great point, particularly on failure. And it's the reason why I think athletics is such a great teacher, because there's nobody in athletics that hasn't failed. Everybody fails. And, I grew up in the coaching era with Michael Jordan coming into college and then pro. And you look at his career and you just think, but nobody remembers that he got cut from his varsity basketball team first. And it was getting cut that led to the success. And nobody realizes that, he hit the last shot to win Dean Smith's first NCAA title, but he missed the last shot of the preceding games when he had those opportunities. But he was still willing to take that last shot when it meant the most. And that's the persistence factor that, you really got to have, and it's got to motivate you to continue to work harder and harder. And it's the reason why we've got a generation that we really have to work hard on, because we've had participatory trophies for everyone. And competitiveness taught is a very, very healthy thing for all kids and for all people, because life is competitive. And I think we try to put icing on that cake that's just unrealistic. And we've had a generation of parents that have done the exact same thing. And we're kind of paying the price right now for that.
Well, the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement, along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Jeff, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Jeff Piersall, are you ready to hoe down?
Let's hoe down.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
I think the biggest thing that's holding me back right now is just believing that we can do this on a global level. And it's just mindset, and I work on it every day.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Believe in you first.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
I work hard, and my faith is my guiding light.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Respect for other people.
What would be one book that you'd recommend to our listeners? And it could be from any genre. Of course, we're going to put a link to Dogs Don't Bark at Parked Cars on your show notes page as well.
John Wooden on leadership is a must for everybody.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Jeff Piersall. And that's Piersall. Okay, Jeff, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you. But you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
It's what I've learned in discernment of people and having the people around you that you want to be most like. And I've had people around me, and I think most of us do this, that we think we like and we enjoy because they're addressing weaknesses of ourselves. And it's not our weaknesses that we need to be focused on. We need to have the people around us that continue to challenge us, continue to move us up, and people we admire, people of great character. And when I made that shift, it's made a huge shift in my life the same way. But the people choices have been probably the single greatest lesson that I would have corrected.
Jeff, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Yes, sir. You sure can. If you just go to Jeff Piersall on either Facebook, LinkedIn, or my website, www.jeffpearsall.com. And you can get to any of our businesses from jeffpearsall.com and also the book, and would love to be able to stay in connection with all of you.
Jeff Piersall, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.